Okay, so hi, we are back again. And in case you're just joining us, I'm Dee Dee from D. Colabella Fine Art, and I'm here with Corey Ide. And I finally got his last name right, so that's a plus. So we are here to introduce our show that's opening up tomorrow night here in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And that show is called Reflecting Life. So I met Corey because we were at the Hamptons Fine Art Fair and we were in the booth across from his booth. And I was just in love with the way he drew, with his subject matter, with everything that he was doing with his art. And so many people were stopping and talking to him and asking about his process. And then we got talking, and I was like, God, I got to show this guy. So I always told you that you remind me of Robert Longo. And if you guys don't know who Robert Longo is, he's an American artist who created a little bit larger scale, some huge, whole room wide charcoals. He would use a subtractive process where he would add all the charcoal and then take it away. But the level of detail that he could achieve and the depth of color, so to speak, or the depth of range of blacks is very similar to your work. So I'd love you to introduce you to everybody and let you start out by telling us about your process and how you decide where to start with one of these pieces.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. It's funny, I think that throughout these last 3 years, I've started the same way, which started off with who I was going to draw, maybe who the subject was, and then I would find something that fit with whatever creative thing was happening at the time. And now I'm starting to see it as what kind of story do I want to tell? And I think that's starting to become my jumping off point.
Okay.
But what's funny is that I think almost in all of them, every idea or concept that I had changed. And that they're completely different than what I thought it was going to be. Like I thought I was like, oh, this is gonna be this and this and this, and then I, take my reference and I do all of this stuff, and then I'm like, oh, it's not gonna work. It's something completely different, and then it ends up being what I think it probably should have been to begin
with, right? And it becomes exactly, and that's part of the creative process, I think, for a lot of artists. You have an idea, you start out, but instead of being so locked into that idea, you kind of let the artistic process lead you, which is a lot of fun. So I also read in your bio, you speak about kind of being at a crossroads and how you started painting not too long ago. I thought I had marked down as a question, has drawing always been part of your life? But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, so it hasn't. I really tried a lot when I was younger. I have some artists in the family, and they could all draw, and I would sit there and try to do it, and theirs would look amazing. And I was telling Rich, I would have heads with arms coming out. I don't know how to do it. And they're like, you just do this, and I was like, it doesn't. It did not make sense to me.
Yeah.
And then I started drawing about 3 years ago. I was at a crossroads professionally.
Yeah.
I decided that I didn't know what I was going to do. So I literally went to bed that night. I prayed to God for something that I could do that He would give me that. And I didn't care what it was. I just wanted it to be what I'm supposed to do. And within the next day or throughout that week, I started drawing. I had a desire to do it, and then out of nowhere, they started getting better and better. Each one was better, a lot better than the first one, and it was only a day later. And so I just kept going with that, and then this is about 3 years later.
Only 3 years to get this level of detail.
Yeah,
it's incredible. So, I noticed Richard, you love to vary your subject matter, but there are some commonalities in here. Yeah. I was saying earlier in one of the previous lives that there's butterflies, hummingbirds, a dove, but specifically the butterfly, and you can even see it in a couple of these behind us, including Metamorphosis and Happiness as a butterfly. So can you tell us about the butterfly and those symbols that you like to add in?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think that it was ever a full-on, it was like more of a conscious choice, like just it's going to be a butterfly. But I think the subconscious was working through now that we've talked about that and I've thought about it, and I'm like, wow, I really do gravitate to doing that. And I really think it has a lot to do with change. And what's interesting is that that's how I started drawing. Is I was completely changing something and going into the unknown and not knowing what it was going to look like when it came out. And it's kind of like a representation of like these past 3 years of my life that have been in complete change.
Right. And you also have a new son,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, he's 2.5.
2.5, yes.
Yeah.
That's new. So one of the things I was going to kind of ask you is, do you use reference? Because a lot of people feel like they're not a real artist if they use reference. But I know I do in my painting. I know Richard does. What about you?
Yeah, I 100% do. I feel like it's the only way that I'd be able to grab the type of detail that I want to grab and to fully explore the truth of something. Because also the memory is kind of like, it's very fickle. So it's like you could think that you remember how something looked and you'll never get exactly what it was, or the memory will fade. And I think that when I have a reference and I can really dive into it, especially when I'm working with eyes, there's a soul behind it.
Yes.
And so if I'm not working from a person who has a life and a story,
Right.
where am I grabbing that from?
Right.
So that's really what I try to do. Is I don't know. It's like, I mean, almost all of my references are people that I know. I think it's nice to have your life be in your art.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and then I was showing everybody earlier as we got closer into metamorphosis, how important and how incredible your details are and the ability to capture those. Even when you look at one of the other paintings that you're not going to see behind us, it's called Fish Out of Water.
Yeah.
And it's a very elegant woman holding a martini glass, and inside of that martini glass is a fish. So I love that. And the way you connect those, tell us kind of what story you're telling with that one in particular.
Yeah. Fish Out of Water, it has like, I think it had multiple meanings to it. It's my wife and I, we were trying to like come up with something. She really liked the idea of like an Audrey Hepburn type of thing. Actually my friend Jesse also was a big help in that, because it's like, that's one of the wonderful things about doing art, is that you can collaborate with a bunch of people who aren't even necessarily involved in the process.
Right.
And like my friend Jesse, who's been like my best friend since I was 15, we always bounce ideas off of each other, or what he's doing or what I'm doing. And I think he said something along the lines of that. And then we were like, I was just thinking, like, what would be something surreal in the glass? And it was that. And then Fish Out of Water. And it became like a person who might not necessarily enjoy being how they're being presented, or things like that. Not necessarily showing their true self. And I think that the idea of wanting to add surreal elements into it is that I feel like that's kind of life in a way. I feel like there's a lot of wonderful, magical things that are happening that we're not always paying attention to. And we're so like concerned with just what is. And I feel like when you look at something that isn't necessarily supposed to be there, it kind of reminds you, whether you're conscious of it or not, that there is that element of life.
Right, and magic in life.
Yeah, there's something wonderful.
Spiritual, exactly. However you view it. Because I know people view magic and faith and spirituality in several different ways. But that really is apparent in your work.
And like
yes, exactly. And, it's really neat to look closely at all of his work and find those little details. It is incredible. So tell us about your artistic goals in 2025. I mean, you've been doing this for 3 years. Where would you like to go?
I'd like to keep going. And I think I'm starting to go into a narrative type of aspect with the one piece here, Abel and the Squirrel, and To Be Free, which is back
Right.
there. Getting more into storytelling, and I'm actually working with a family friend, Mike Cross, and he is writing short stories to the drawings that I'm doing.
Oh, amazing.
And he's taking it, his interpretation and his idea for a story. And what's really wonderful is that there's a lot of parallels to what I was feeling or thinking when I was creating it that he then picks up on his own.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Abel and the squirrel, I didn't tell him, I had a backstory for Abel. Like, I'm drawing him, and all of a sudden the story's coming to my head. And I'm thinking, like, who is this guy? What does he do? All of these things. And I had an idea about him, so to speak, being a widower.
Right.
And then also Mr. Mike was able to draw that out of it without me even telling him, which was
That's incredible.
yeah. And he's an amazing writer, and so his stories are going to be put onto my Instagram with those, and see what.
Yeah, and I think we might be getting those on the website. So if we do, I'll definitely do a post and tell you guys you can go onto the website and read those short stories because I think they're going to be incredible. And once we get them online, we're also going to put QR codes up here so you can go in and read them. So when you come in, you can just scan and land on that page and read those stories. We should be getting them within the next couple of days. So I'll tell you guys when that happens. So I always like to ask, what's the most valuable piece of advice that you've gotten in your process, in your journey so far? Because you're still just starting, so there's going to be a lot more to come. But
So, like I said, I came from a family who could draw. My cousin Jake, I was putting drawings together, and he looked at it and he said, "Try to think of a drawing as a sculpture. Like, think of it as you're sculpting something. You're not drawing it."
right,
And that opened up my mind, like, to the nose and things like that. And I was like, "Whoa, you're working it, and you're molding it, and you're like fleshing it out.
right,
It's not a line and a line and a hook."
yeah,
And so that really opened up my mind to a different way of seeing it and approaching it. So I think that always stands out when I think about some of the process of somebody's help with
yeah.
that. Yeah, I think that's probably.
The most, yeah, I love that. I've never looked at drawing like that, but I feel that way about painting.
Okay, yeah.
Because you can mold the paint and move it and till you get the desired effect. So that's interesting that you look at drawing like that. I love that.
Shadows and the light.
Absolutely, absolutely. So is there anything else you'd like to tell everybody besides come to the show, of course?
Yeah, come to the
Yeah.
enjoy the artwork. It's a wonderful space, and like Rich has a bunch of beautiful work here, and it's really, really great. I'm really, really grateful to be a part of this.
Yeah, and we're grateful to have you. Thank you so much for coming. He's from Maryland also, so he took a trip up here. And we're really just so honored to have you. We love your work, and we hope everybody comes to see it. Again, follow Corey on Instagram. And also, please follow us and check out the website to see all of the work and see To Be Free that he was talking about. And of course, Fish Out of Water that we were talking about. You can see that all on the website. So we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I hope you all can make it. There's wine and bites, and we'll be here at 6 o'clock. Thanks so much for joining us for the Instagram Live preview event, and we will see you tomorrow.